Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about ADHD, but we're not going to do it by just listing off a bunch of deficits. Instead, we're going to look at it as a different kind of brain wiring. Think of it like a unique operating system, one that has its own rules, its own challenges, and yeah, its own incredible strengths.
I really want to start with this question because it gets right to the core of everything. For so long, the story around ADHD has been all about what's wrong with you. You're lazy, you're disorganized, you just don't have enough willpower. But what if that whole way of looking at it is just wrong? So let's start by digging into that feeling, that frustrating experience so many people with ADHD live with day in and day out. It's this huge, confusing gap between what they know they're capable of and what they can actually get themselves to do. I mean, this is the central puzzle, isn't it? It's that crazy ability to get so lost in a project you're passionate about that you literally forget to eat or sleep. But then you're faced with the paralyzing struggle of just starting a simple task like loading the dishwasher. It's so inconsistent, and that's where all that negative self-talk starts to creep in. And this just nails that disconnect. You know, from the outside, it might look like you're not trying, but on the inside, it feels like you're running a marathon every single day, just trying to keep up. It's like you're putting in twice the energy for half the results, all because you're in a world that wasn't quite built for you.
So, what's really going on under the hood? Well, it's not a character flaw. It's all about neurology. It helps to think of it less as a disorder and more like your brain is running a completely different operating system, like it's a Mac in a world full of PCs. And here's the key thing to get. ADHD has nothing to do with how smart you are. It's about your brain's executive functions. Basically, the CEO in your head that's supposed to translate your intentions into actual actions. In an ADHD brain, that CEO is super creative, a genius even. But let's just say they have a very unique management style. Have you ever wondered why you're always late, even when you have the best intentions? Well, it could be something called time blindness. For a lot of people with ADHD, time doesn't feel like this smooth, straight line. It's more like two big buckets, now and not now. And that not now bucket just feels like this vague, distant future, right up until the panic sets in. I love this quote because it completely reframes that whole idea of an attention deficit. See, it's not a lack of attention, it's an abundance of it. The real problem is you're struggling to control where that fire hose of attention is pointing. Somebody else has the remote. So why is it so hard to just start that boring task? Well, it comes down to one word: dopamine. The ADHD brain has a different kind of reward system. It's not being lazy when it avoids doing the spreadsheets. It's just being brutally honest about the kind of neurochemical fuel it needs to get going. It craves things that are interesting, not just things that are important. Okay, so what happens when you try to run this unique operating system in a world that's built for neurotypical brains? Well, there are real and often hidden consequences. Let's take a look at the heavy toll of trying to force that square peg into a round hole year after year. And look, we're not talking about minor inconveniences here. The daily friction between an ADHD brain and the world's expectations can lead to some really serious, life-altering challenges across your health, your relationships, and your career. And maybe the most painful cost of all is the one on the inside. That constant gap between who you know you could be and what you actually accomplish, it builds this deep, chronic sense of shame. It's that quiet, nagging feeling that something is just fundamentally wrong with you. So, to survive, a lot of people with ADHD become absolute masters at masking. They build these elaborate systems and put on a performance just to appear normal. But man, is it exhausting. The sheer amount of energy spent just acting neurotypical is like this massive hidden tax on their mental resources every single day. So, this brings us to a really crucial turning point. What if we've been looking at this whole thing completely backwards? What if, instead of trying to fix all these traits, we just reframed them? Let's try flipping the switch and looking at the other side of the coin for a minute. I mean, this pretty much says it all, right? Maybe the problem isn't the fish. Maybe the problem is that we're judging it against the skills of a squirrel. Success isn't about changing who you are. It's about finding the right environment. It's about finding your ocean. And check this out. This table just lays out that reframe perfectly. Every single perceived glitch has a powerful strength on the other side. Impulsivity? That's also courageous risk-taking. Distractibility? That's creativity. And hyperfocus? That's the amazing ability to do incredible, deep,
passionate work for hours on end. And hey, this isn't just some feel-good theory. We've actually got the data. People with ADHD are 300% more likely to start their own business. And why is that? It's because being an entrepreneur actually rewards things like risk-taking, creativity, and high energy, the very same traits that often get you in trouble in a traditional job. And honestly, the list of strengths just keeps going. We're talking about incredible resilience that comes from overcoming challenges your whole life, a wicked sense of humor, and this uncanny ability to stay completely calm and find a solution when everyone else is panicking. These really are the superpowers of the ADHD brain. Okay, now let's take this reframe one final massive step further. Let's zoom all the way out past our modern world and look at the deep history of humanity. What if these traits weren't just useful, but were actually essential for our survival as a species? Yeah, there's this really cool idea called the hunter versus farmer hypothesis. And the basic gist is that way back in nomadic hunter-gatherer societies, traits like impulsivity and being hyper-aware of everything in your environment, well, those weren't a problem. They were a massive evolutionary advantage. So researchers actually tested this with a simple online game. People had to gather as many berries as they could. They had a choice. They could stay at one bush while it slowly ran out of berries, or they could spend time and energy moving to a new, fresh one. It's that classic dilemma: explore or exploit. And the results were absolutely fascinating. The people who scored higher for ADHD-like traits, they were way more likely to ditch a depleting patch and go exploring for a new one. And here's the kicker: they ended up with more berries. They were actually better at foraging. And what this suggests is that these traits weren't just good for the individual, they were good for the entire community. Think about it. Every tribe needs its steady farmers, for sure, but it also desperately needs its restless explorers, the ones who are always spotting new opportunities, finding the next water source, or discovering a new patch of food. Which leaves us with this one last really provocative thought to chew on. Maybe ADHD isn't a malfunction at all. Maybe it's a finely tuned adaptation for a fast-paced, unpredictable, ever-changing environment. A world that honestly looks a whole lot more like our ancient past than our structured modern present. What do you think?
This presentation was inspired by recent scientific research and the personal success stories of the ADHD community. You can find the links to the original sources in the video description below. We hope these resources help you discover the strengths of the ADHD mind.